They must be places of magic. They're ordinary places, but some magical things happen. Places like the break room at work, or the local bar, or at the card table, or where you get your hair done, or maybe even around the patio or the kitchen table. These ordinary places where somehow magically everyone is an expert. It doesn't matter what the problem is, what the situation is, how complex it is. In those magical moments, it just all gets solved. And you'll have a solution, or if not a solution, the solution, right? Or maybe not solved, but at least, well, we can blame somebody for the problem anyway. It's somebody else's fault, of course. Messed up politics? Well, we certainly know why that's a problem, right? Or the economy, there we go again. Catholic Church, well, let's not go there. Society today, pick a generation, X, Y, Z, doesn't matter, blame them. You name the problem, somebody's going to be blamed. But how often, though, it goes that next step, and we bring God into the blame. Sometimes, indeed, blaming God, but more often just simply declaring God, with certitude, that God is on our side, right? We can blame and condemn with others, but we do so in God's name now. We close the doors in God's name to keep out the impure. We use fear of God to threaten others into submission. In the name of God, we can inflict shame on others, sinners that they are. We create an image of God that is vengeful and condemning, who delights in inflicting punishment. But that is not our faith. It is not our faith tradition. It is not our faith teaching. It is not our faith story. Well, the voice of God we often hear in our scriptures is passionate, even angry at times, but not in condemnation. Rather, God always is setting the stage for our return. God is always healing and forgiving and uniting and gathering. In that Old Testament book of Chronicles that we heard from today, the author gives kind of a synopsis of the history of the Israelite people. Not from a political perspective, but from a theological one. And from a theological viewpoint, indeed, God was upset. God was angry. But the destruction of Jerusalem and their exile into Babylon happened not because of God's vengeance. It happened because, well, Israel was unfaithful. Early and often, the scriptures tell us that God sent messengers, but God's people didn't listen. But finally, generations later, when people were finally ready to listen, God did not voice condemnation, but the restoration of their home and their temple, and most of all, the dignity as his children. See, God is always on a rescue mission, always. God is always about finding a way to bring us back after we've wandered off. God is always about healing us after we've been wounded. God is always about forgiving even when we struggle to forgive ourselves. God sets things right when we mess them up. God will let us walk right into the darkness, but not leave us abandoned there. God will always help us, or God, when we fall apart, God will be the one that puts us back together, but better this time. Because in some way, at some time, through some circumstance, God's going to find a way to open the door, to welcome back the exile, to forgive the sinner, to heal the wounds that our own sins create. In some way, at some time, through some circumstance, God is going to restore our dignity and rekindle hope within us. Because there is nothing in God that seeks anything but to create, to heal us, to forgive us, to form us and fashion us into the very best of what God calls us to be as individuals and as a community. In the oft-quoted line of the gospel, God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. That's who God is. That's what God does.